Here's the big nut.
Good evening, and welcome to the Lassoed Marriage Romance Collection Book Club. We are in our 8th week. We cannot believe how fast this has gone and that we only have one more week left. Tonight, our author is Kathleen Highbrow, and our Colorado Coincidence. Oh, I'm sorry, Colorado Coincidence. I did read the book. I swear I did. We're going to take it over to Angie, and she's going to tell you a little bit about our author as we get started.
Hi there. My name is Breidenbach, and I am one of the authors in the Lassoed by Marriage Romance Collection. And I get the honor of being your MC as we've gone through this 9-week series meeting each one of the authors of the novellas. And it's been really fun because each author has such a different and unique personality. And I get to introduce to you Kathleen Highbrow tonight. She has a wonderful story to tell you about the Colorado Coincidence, but she also has some fun heritage stories that we've asked her to share, including being the 10th generation family in Texas. So I'm going to let Miss Kathleen Highbrow take it away. We're going to visit with her for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to open it up to question and answer, and we're going to have a lot of fun sharing this 8th week of our 9-week series. And if you've missed any of these events, we do have a YouTube Lassoed by Marriage Author Events playlist. Oh, and it's just so easy to plug that into Google, and it'll take you right there. So we'll see you back here shortly. And right now, Kathleen, please take it away.
Hi, ladies. I'm so happy to be here. This is so much fun. It would be even more fun if I could just come there, but, you know, we can't do everything. I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to start by telling you a story, and then we can talk about the story. The Colorado Coincidence was such a fun book to write because what you don't know, it's a little insight here, I don't think I've shared this anywhere else, so you heard it here first. This is really 2 stories that became one story because these are 2 characters who were never supposed to be characters in the same book. What happened is, once upon a time, I set out to write a story about a pregnant widow named Glory Lowe. And the way this story came to me was basically I just saw this woman at the graves of her family and just so distraught. And then she sees these men coming over the hill, and just that whole scene, that first scene with Glory in it, that's all I had of that story. I just knew that I had to write about that woman. So I didn't know where to go from there. And I know you've heard throughout this series different ways that the writers of these stories come across tidbits or facts or things that bring them into the next part of a story when they don't know where they're going. In this case, it was a simple matter of the wrong guy riding over the hill. I knew there was someone who was going to ride over the hill. I just didn't expect it would be the guy from the other story that I was working on. But Mac was kind of bossy, and he was the one who came riding over the hill. But see, he had a different story. Back when I was writing a series for Waterbrook, Random House, about Colorado women, I had a story that I wrote called Anna Finch and the Hired Gun. To this day, it's still one of my most favorite stories because the research alone on it was so much fun. I got to write about this woman who wanted to be taken seriously in her writing, you know, and who wanted to be a serious writer of newspaper stories that actually meant something, which was kind of interesting for the time period because this was right at the beginning of yellow journalism, and, you know, most people didn't really care if it was true as long as it sold newspapers. And she really wanted to write about Doc Holliday. And anyway, so she was a very serious woman. And during this series, I found that there was a whole class of men who came to the States during those times called remittance men. And remittance men were basically mostly British, and they were paid not to go home. Either they were a disappointment to their families, or there was some possibly criminal things in their background. Whatever it was, these men actually took money from family to not go home. And they were called remittance men because they lived on the remittance of family. Most of them were noblemen. Many of them were second sons, or just people that you couldn't bring out in public. So I came up with the character of Mac, who was a remittance man. And I had a great story for Mac until he rode over the hill and showed up at Glory's place. So I thought, okay, I can do this. And here's Glory, up to her elbows in Colorado mud and ice, and here comes Mac over the hill. And I thought, well, okay. The last thing Mac is a hero. And as you know, in the book, he tells Glory that more than once. He's not a hero. So why was he riding towards Glory? I didn't know. I had no idea why he was coming over the hill. Because he was supposed to be, in another story, helping that heroine find her brother who was lost. So I've got to find another guy to do that, and I will. But anyway, so Mac shows up, and poor Glory, she needed a good man, and she got Mac, a card shark who cares for foolishness, for faith, any of those things. And the way he sees it, the one good thing he can do for this widow woman is help her out of predicament and then get her out of her life quickly. That's still, that kind of set me off on the trail, if you'll allow me a little hyperbole, of the story. And I thought, well, okay. Glory doesn't see Mac that way. To her, he is a hero. And while her husband might have made plans for somebody else to come and rescue her, Glory knows that God's plans are higher. I sat in on last week's meeting, and it was so much fun just to sit on the sidelines and watch you guys. I have to say that I agree with something Gina said last week. I'm not a huge fan of stories about arranged marriages, which is kind of an interesting thing to say when you're in a collection of stories about arranged marriages. But I've written a few. I've written a couple of them, actually. My favorite of those with that plot is The Inconvenient Marriage of Charlotte Beck, which was the sequel to Anna Finch and the Hired Gun. In that story, the characters made a decision to enter into the marriage to get out of a situation. And to me, it's in those types of stories, it's more of why they did it, I guess, than how it comes about that is more interesting to me. And I'd love to get some of your feedback on that too when we get to that point. But I think that you see a lot about a character, and just as you see a lot about a person when you put them into hot water and you cause them to make decisions that are not the easiest, maybe are not even something they want to decide about. So in this book, The Inconvenient Marriage of Charlotte Beck, she had a decision she wanted to make, and her father offered her a bargain. You may do this, but you must do this, sort of thing. That's kind of what happened in this story as well. I think that finding that place in characters where their strengths and their fear meet, I want to do this, I've got to find a way to get to that goal that I have, and maybe this is the way. Makes for an interesting story, because to me the best stories are when characters start butting heads and start making a ruckus as far as we both want something and it's going to take us in opposite directions. In the other book about an inconvenient marriage, the character wants to go to college. Her father says, well, I'll give you 4 years at Wellesley, and then you're going to come back and marry this man. She figures anything can happen during 4 years, so she agrees. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read, but it involves a British astronomer, a performance of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, and the Queen Elizabeth. I'm sorry, Queen Victoria. Wrong era. Queen Victoria. So I think that these characters, back to Charlotte and Mac, you know, they had a similar conundrum. They had a similar quandary. They had Mac had his moment to become a hero, and Charlotte had her moment to be helped. I think God kind of puts us in those places sometimes, and it's a whole lot easier to be on the helping end than the receiving end. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of fun to play with the story of Charlotte and of Glory and Mac, and see what a woman whose faith is stronger than anything else will say and do when made this kind of offer by a man who has, you know, great card playing skills and not so much in the way of the love of the Lord. So that was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. And let me stop here just a second and ask you a question. And this is maybe something for conversation later, but just get you thinking about this. Have you ever thought you knew exactly what God was going to do to get you out of a situation? Like you thought, if I just take steps A, B, and C, it's going to lead me to C, which is, of course, where God wants me. Maybe you're the type, like I tend to be sometimes, where you give God the marching orders, is kind of the way I refer to it sometimes. You know, we know, again, if God will just do this, then this good thing will happen. I mean, there's no shame in that. I do it. But how many times has God thrown away your list? Just tossed out your list and done something so amazing and spectacular that you never saw it coming. And you certainly didn't see it coming in that way. I love writing those kind of stories, but you know what I love even more is living them. And I have. Ephesians 3:20 is my life verse. And, you know, God has proven to me over and over how much more He knows than I do. And it kind of seems silly that I have to be reminded of that. You know, I am not the universal creator. He is. But that's, you know, in the moment, I tend to forget that. But when He does show me who's in charge, boy, the results are just so much more than I ever expected. So what I want to do is I want to read a few pages, if you'll indulge me, from the Colorado Coincidence to see if you can see why Glory makes the choice she does and what she teaches Mac in that moment. It is a lesson I keep learning over and over. I'm going to be reading starting on page 273. Just give me a chance to explain, he whispered. He wrapped his arm around Glory's waist and escorted her out the side entrance and into the sunshine of the enclosed back alley. I can't imagine what you have to say that would make me walk back in there and marry you, she said, her heart racing. The only way to keep your property from being sold to someone by the bank is to get married, Mrs. Lowe. It doesn't have to be to me, but it needs to be to someone. He paused. And soon. You heard Mr. Wainwright say the property is already in foreclosure. She nodded. That was one of the few things she'd heard in the banker's office that had stuck with her. All right, she said slowly, you've got my attention. Thanks to specific wording that your husband insisted on, the property rights he held transferred directly to the next man you marry. Without that clause in the loan, you would have no hope of keeping your land. But with it, she asked, knowing the answer, with it your husband can pay off the mortgage and the property no longer belongs to the bank. He leaned against the wall and seemed to be watching her for a reaction. I assume he had that clause in mind when he sent for this fellow from Texas to come and wed you. Seeing as he hasn't arrived, I am offering to be Pitt's man, Mrs. Lowe. Will you let me help you? She shook her head and turned away. I don't even know you and why. She turned around again. Why would you do this for me? Because I can, he told her. But what if Pitt's man, she paused to choose her words carefully. That is, what if the man Pitt sent for me shows up? Then what? Then you will have him if you choose. Thank you, she said sarcastically, but I'm old-fashioned. I prefer one husband at a time. One husband is all you'll have. He moved closer, then looked around before returning his attention to Glory. I will marry you in name only, give the bank time to process the papers, and give you the deed free and clear. And then you can get yourself an annulment. How is that possible? The law allows for recourse for a spouse when the marriage has not been. He gave her a look that completed the sentence for her. I see. And she did. It helped that Pitt had written the clause into the loan papers. Surely he wouldn't be opposed to the notion. I can see you're considering it, he said. Look, I don't have a decent reputation in this town, and for good reason. For that matter, there are a few places other than my own mother's home where I thought well of. You're not helping your case, Mr. McCoy. I am being honest, Mrs. Lowe. His look was both direct and intense. I'm far from a decent man, but I will do the decent thing today if you'll let me. I won't take your money permanently, she said, even if I am signing up to take your name. He looked surprised, and she wondered which of those statements was the cause. Fair enough, he said. As soon as the ranch is back up and running and we're making a profit, you'll be paid back every penny you put into it. At Mr. McCoy's nod, Glory inhaled deeply of the sun-scented air and then let it out slowly. Then we have a deal, she said as she reached out to shake his hand. If the Englishman thought it odd that a woman would make such a gesture, his expression did not show it. Instead, he gripped her hand firmly and looked into her eyes. We do. 10 minutes later, she walked out of Sheriff Drummond's office as Mrs. McCoy. She couldn't help but notice that though the sheriff easily agreed to act as witness, he wasn't nearly as free with his congratulations afterward as his wife was. In fact, he appeared not to like her new husband at all. No matter, she didn't have to like him either, for he wouldn't be around much longer. She would always respect his decision, though, and would never forget the man who made it possible for her to keep her land. Glory touched the slight beginning of a skull just below the ribbons of her dress. Now to decide how to tell Mr. McCoy he would be a father. If he stayed married to her, that is, which he wouldn't, so why bother with such personal information? Her decision made, Glory kept her mouth shut as she and her new husband walked over to the bank to have their second meeting of the day with Mr. Wainwright. This time, Sheriff Drummond and the preacher came along to verify a wedding had taken place, and to sign the papers as witnesses that the Pittman Lowe property, now known as the Lowe-McCoy property, was owned free and clear by Mac and Glory Lowe. Once papers are in order, the bank will officially move the foreclosure proceedings from the property. Mr. Wainwright said when the last page was signed. He met her gaze. Congratulations, Mrs. McCoy, on your very recent wedding. Ignoring his obviously sarcastic statement, Glory watched the banker deposit the signed papers into a folder, then place that folder in a cabinet behind him. How long it will take until the land is officially mine? Hours, she corrected. The banker closed the cabinet with a thud and shrugged. I will do my best to get this situation handled with all the expediency it deserved. Though the pastor and the sheriff probably did not understand the meaning behind those words, Glory did. Likely her new husband did too. Glory turned her attention to the lawman. But the bank can't take the property as long as it's paid for and they've given you a receipt for the money. Isn't that right, Sheriff? Sheriff Drummond laughed and nudged the pastor. Well, that's true, but what possible reason would Mr. Wainwright have for delaying a payment your husband made fair and square? The lump rising beneath the banker's eye was one. The fresh bruise on his chin, another. Glory exchanged a look with her new husband, then affected her sweetest smile. I'm sure I can't think of a thing. All right, dear, Mr. McCoy said as he patted her arm. Now that we have taken care of things with the preacher and the banker, what do you say to a trip to the mercantile before we go home? I sure would like some of your biscuits and gravy for breakfast tomorrow, and our flour is running low. I loved writing that scene, I think, more than any other scene in the book, because I needed to get my feisty girl and my non-hero hero on the same page. And that was fun. Neither one of them thinks this is going to be permanent, which was even more fun. Just one more thing before I turn this over to Angela. Did you see how Glory challenged Mac to ask God to show himself in this book? That part of the story was taken from a real-life testimony of someone I know. I'm going to just read a little bit of it here at the end of that section. And I'm going to go back to, sorry, I'm having trouble turning my pages here. We're on page, oh shoot, page 376, where he says he doesn't want to argue with her, not on his honeymoon. And she said, I'm serious. Why do you make that face when I talk about God? And he says, because it's been my experience that the ones who talk about God the most are the ones who appear to know him the least, if he indeed exists at all. Oh, he exists all right. If he didn't, how would you explain everything that's happened since sunup this morning? Can you look at all of what's transpired and say there is a God and I see him everywhere? I look, he shrugged. I assure you that statement has never crossed my mind. Well, then I'm going to challenge you to ask him to show you he's here. You mean you want me to speak to an invisible being and demand he become visible? The sarcasm in his voice was impossible to miss. No, Mr. McCoy, that's not what I meant at all. Yes, he may be invisible to our eyes, but just sometimes that's just because we don't know where to look. Why don't you ask him where to look? So that scene right there, that part of that scene was taken from real life. I have a friend who, this is part of his real-life testimony. He was a successful studio musician in LA all throughout the 70s and 80s. Telling my age here. And he toured with the Beach Boys. That was his major job. He was always with them when they toured. But he did a lot of other high-profile work. He really lived a glamorous rock and roll, you know, right out of pages of the Rolling Stone lifestyle. And he never told anyone, but his heart was very empty. You know, he had everything. I mean, how often do we hear this? He gained the world, but he didn't have Jesus. And a friend of his best friend, who is a Hollywood star whose name you would recognize if I told you, he told him, he said, I'm empty. I've got everything and I'm empty. They were in a restaurant in Venice Beach, California at the time. And his friend, who was a believer, I wish I could tell you who this is, but I know that someday my friend's going to write this book. I keep telling him he's got to. And so I don't want to scoop him by telling you all the details of this, because this is really the centerpiece of his story. But anyway, his friend said to him, just, if you don't know whether God is real, just ask him to show that he is. And he said it was such a simple challenge that he said, all right, I'll do that. And he said, how many times do you think God needs to tell me that before I should believe it? And his buddy said, I don't know, what do you think, 3? Being sarcastic. And so they parted ways after the meal, and my friend was walking down Venice Boardwalk, and I don't know if any of you have been to California and walked the Venice Beach Boardwalk, but it's an interesting place with lots of interesting people. And he tells a much longer version than I'll tell you, but the short version is 3 different points between the restaurant and his car, which was parked about, I think about a quarter mile away, was the way he tells the story, in a parking lot, stopped him and said, Jesus loves you. Just like that. Those words exactly. 3 times. 3 people who did not appear to be connected with each other in any way. 3 very different people. And he said he got to his car and he sat, closed the doors, and just wept. Just wept. And that was a turning point for him. I love stories like that where God does exactly what we ask him to do outside of the list, but more of that honest prayer of, God, where are you? God, show me. God, lead me. And I wish that I had the faith of Glory, because Glory just jumps right in and says, well, okay, look what God did today. I wish I had that faith. I aspire to that faith. But I will say that if I have written anything into this amazing story, that my friend, who has gone on to become a pastor, he's been a pastor now for about 20 years, a worship leader, and a songwriter who's written some songs you would know. If I put any of that essence that turned my friend in that right direction towards turning Mac, a fictional guy who could be anybody, any of us, around, then I don't mind having used the device of the arranged marriage to do it. So that's my story.
Nice. Well, then, what we're going to do, thank you, Kathleen. I think that was a wonderful story.
Thank you.
And we're going to turn it over now to question and answer time. So we're going to ask the book club to ask you some questions, and then we'll just have some back and forth chat, and I'll keep up with the camera as much as I can.
Okay.
So here we go to the bookstore. Alrighty, gals, what you got prepared for us?
I have a question. And it's interesting. I think we've kind of done this through all of the novellas, but I think it's kind of cool for me. So in your head, what did your characters look like? Did you have somebody in mind? Was it a star? Was it just, what kind of image did you portray for Mac and Glory?
Well, I saw Glory as being, oh gosh, this really pretty blonde. Gosh, now I can't think of her names. You put me on the spot.
Do you have a Pinterest page I can show?
I think I probably, well, I don't know if I have them all in there for that book or not. There's so many, I kind of put everybody together. But I saw her as this really pretty blonde actress. Oh shoot, now I can't even think of it. Yeah, you got me. I can't think of her name. Oh, Reese Witherspoon. I sort of saw her as a Reese Witherspoon. Yeah, and Mac. Oh, Mac. He was kind of a Colin Farrell to me. Very cleaned up, prettied up Colin Farrell.
Okay. Okay.
Colin Farrell. Okay. I'm going to show really quick, if you don't mind, your Pinterest page. So 1 second, and just so that you can find her. There we go. Ta-da! There we have Miss Kathleen Barbo, and she has lots of fun pins up there. Ooh, Firefly Summer, that looks like a fun one.
Oh, thanks.
And they're Unexpected Love, Love Inspired, Sadie's Secrets, and she's got quite a few of her books on her Pinterest page. That looks like a great place to go and enjoy.
Lassoed.
There's the Lassoed by Marriage one. Is this a whole board?
I don't remember. I started out doing Pinterest things, and then the day job just got in the way. I'm a paralegal by day. Excuse me. And then I thought, well, better to put them all in one than nothing at all. So there they are. And I think people also pin things to it. That's why you see multiples, because I do allow people to pin to my page.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's fun. I love to see, the question that I would ask back to the ladies is, who did you see in those two roles? I'm curious. Did anybody have any images that they had in mind?
I don't think I had a star. I didn't put a face to these ones, but I think since we started this, I allow you guys to. So I waited like, okay, who did you have in mind more than versus me putting somebody.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I sort of saw my characters, and then kind of found who looked like them.
Okay. Now,
It doesn't always turn out that way, but that's the way it was in this one.
when you write your books, do you find that do you have to like figure out what they look like first before you can have them starting to interact, or does that just happen on its own?
So it depends. I have to figure out, now this may not make sense, or maybe it will. I have to figure out what they're going to be like. Sometimes that's how do they look. Sometimes that's how do they act, how do they speak, what's the background. It really varies. It really varies.
Is that the same way that you choose a name, or do you choose the names first?
That's another one that varies, but I'll tell you, I keep a list of names, and sometimes a name will create a character for me. That's what happened with Glory. Glory started out as a name, and I knew that there was this simple country woman named Glorietta, whose mother said she was never fancy enough for that name. And so I started with that, and she became who she was. That's happened. Mac's name actually came from my dad's side of the family. His mother's family is the McMinns. And I'd actually named him Mac McMinn in their honor, and then before this story was bought by Barber, because like I said, he wasn't supposed to be in that book. He had his own story that was just in development. I sold another story where the hero's last name was McMinn, so I had to change it to McCoy. And he didn't fit McCoy, so that was kind of hard. And I had this happen in another book as well. I wrote a series called The Secret Lives of Will Tucker, and it was Pinkerton agents and a little bit of mystery and some suspense. And I had a guy, one of the two Pinkerton agents, who was an inventor. If you like the TV show Wild Wild West, that was sort of my jumping off point for this story. I saw these two Pinkerton agents who were inventors. But his name was Asa. It was Asa Smith. That was his name. And I created a character to go with the name of Asa Smith. And then when my editor saw it, and she said, well, I love this story and I love everything about it, but we can't name him Asa. And I kind of had this crisis of conscience, like, but he's Asa. I don't know who he's going to be. And I actually, funny story, I actually named him after her cat. I did.
I have to tell you, I just found out that I have a relative way back, great kind of grandfather thing, whose first name is Asa. So I'm like, oh, we lost
it. Perfect to the time. And she said, oh, that's too strange. So his name is Luke, because she was a Star Wars fan and had cats named Luke and Leia. So I said, okay, what about Luke? Yeah, he became Luke.
What other questions do you ladies have?
I have a question. Through the book, through the story, you kept talking about the creek and the stair. And then finally Mac found the Bible in the stair. How did you weave that into your story? How did you know that you were going to put that Bible in the stair for her to find later, somehow?
Oh, interesting story. That was actually an afterthought. I'm glad you liked that. I needed a way for her husband to make one last statement on his approval of the events. And so I kept thinking, now how can I do this? What did he do? What did he leave her? And then I thought, well, that would be, in a man's mind, a test. If he's good enough, he's going to fix the stairs. And that's how it came out. And so I had to put in a few scenes where people are walking on the stairs and that step started creaking. And that's how I did it.
I loved that you did that, but at the same time, I was like, oh, that was a memory. Don't touch it. Don't touch that stair. You did touch it.
Well, and you know, in my mind, I just see her kind of putting it back. you know, to be found on another day. But we didn't get to go that far in the story.
20,000 words is hard to do.
It's very hard to do. I mean, I could have written a 100,000-word book out of that story.
Same here.
I didn't want to. Right. Yeah, it ended too soon. I wanted to know more.
Yes, right. Yes.
Wanted it to carry out.
And I loved that the father came back in the story. You know, that he came to, he came to. I liked how you got it. It wasn't
Thank you. That was a happy accident, too, because he was supposed to be a bad guy. I thought he was a bad guy, and then when I started writing him, I thought, nope, he loves his son, and he loves his son's mom. And so I just wanted to have more of that in there, too. There's another 20,000 words I could have added.
Okay.
Well, I think you can tell we all like the story.
Oh, thank you.
I really did it. It flowed so well. It read easily. All the little details seemed to come together so well. You had humor in there, which really was fun and made it interesting. I have one question though. They traveled to Colorado for her health. And I wondered if there was any truth in that. How did you weave that in? Is that a fact or?
It is. Actually, that's another thing I discovered in my research on Anna Finch and the hired gun, because that's how Doc Holliday got to Colorado. He was a consumptive. He had lung problems that cleared up or got better, I'll put it that way, because he did eventually die of that, but it got better in the high altitude dry air. So that was something that people who had those issues were told to do. Their doctors basically told them, pack up and go to, New Mexico or Colorado, up in the mountains, and they really felt, I don't think they knew what it was, but they, the healing air is really what they called it. So that was, again, it's funny how my stories kind of start rolling into each other, because I get this research, and I'm sure you would nod along with me, Angie. You get this research, and it's like, oh, that's a whole other book. Oh, I can use that. And, I've researched a book that I wrote in, before it was ever published, and I've been at this now 15 years. And I'm still using research from that first book, and that book never got published. So that's where it came from. It was a thing that was done. If you had problems with your lung, what they call consumption, that's what you did. Is you found dry, cold, low humidity air, and it did. A lot of people got well.
How did the doctors in those days even find out about that, though? I mean, I guess that's. I don't know quite how they would know, in Colorado or New Mexico, unless they just assumed.
I think a lot of it was word of mouth. Somebody would know someone who, got better when they went out west, because you got to think about the time period that they were living in. This was a time of westward expansion. People were leaving the cities, and they were heading out west for all this land. I live in Oklahoma now, and there was the land rush. This is a little bit before that, but not much. People wanted to make new lives out west, and I think some of them just had the happy accident of feeling better when they got there. And then, the newspapers of the time were very influential, and I was surprised at how many there were. We have fewer newspapers now than they did back then in the 1870s and 80s. And so I think that would just be my guess, where a lot of the information came from, so-and-so. It was a miracle, because, there still was the yellow journalism at the time. Let's, print all these sensational stories, and I think enough sensational stories about people who were cured, probably led the doctors to think, well, there's something to this.
I think you're right about the the newspapers. And if you want to, it's kind of fun. You can get a membership to these different online newspapers that you can read, you know, everything that's been scanned and things like that. And you find a lot of articles that really deal with real life, like health and well-being and travel, and people that have gone to visit relatives for a month at a time. They would announce those things in the newspaper in like the community columns. They'd be sent from one back east to go stay with a relative, and suddenly they got well. So I think Kathleen is just right on. But it's really fun.
Exactly. I think also back then, I know that I live near to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and they have hot springs there. And that was a whole other, my Will Tucker series kind of came out of a visit to the hot springs, but it was kind of the same thing. The wealthy would go and take the cure, you know, and I think that made them kind of, and that goes way back, pre-Civil War. So I think they probably were sort of the mind that you could go places and cure things, and then, you know, just add Colorado and the mountains to that.
What other thoughts and questions or anything, comments would you like to say?
How movies sometimes they always have a different ending to the story. If you ever were to rewrite this, I would like for you to let the mom live and then see a happy, you know what, change it up, because I wanted more and did it. But I think that would be a good thing, like the mom was alive and he got reunited with her because he loved her so, and maybe the mom and dad, and go down that avenue and we would buy that book, and I'd make all these ladies come back and we could talk about it again.
Love that. I would so love that. I also I would love to write a book about his brother. Can you imagine the bad brother exiled in the Caribbean? There's got to be a story in that somewhere.
Oh, yeah. You got to do that one.
But yes, I would love to have written. To me, I could do a whole book just on the romance of the older folks. That, you know, I've only been married for 5 years, so us old folks have romance too.
Did I miss what happened to Colin's mom?
To Colin's mom? She
Yeah.
Oh, Colin's mom? Yeah, she did. They were not married anymore. I kind of didn't say. I did say, but then it kind of got clipped. You know, it's like the movie clips that were on the cutting room floor. Editorial decisions, they decided to just leave it as an unanswered question.
Okay.
But what do you think happened to her? Maybe I killed her off too. I don't know. Honestly, my editor and I talked about it, and she said, you know, I think we can just leave it that she's no longer in the picture. She probably died. I thought, okay. That's my editor.
Yeah.
Let us know when you write the book about Colin, okay?
I will. I have some ideas.
I need to pop in here and ask you, Kathleen, right before we started, we were having just kind of a mini conversation about your 10 generations deep in Texas, and I don't want that to be missed.
Oh, yeah.
So would you tell us a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Ibarbo is actually my married name. My first husband, David Ibarbo's 9 times great-grandfather was Antonio Gil Ibarbo, a Spanish Don who came over. He was actually born in what was Spanish territory in the 1700s, which is now North Louisiana. But he was born there and became a Spanish Don. He was, as I said, he was a child of noble people and did some pretty cool things in Texas. He brought his people out of San Antonio back to Nacogdoches, which is where the, I guess you'd call it county seat, for lack of a better word. And he did a lot of really interesting things. And it's funny, when my husband brought me to the his grandmother's house for the first time. We were in college and dating, and he said, I want you to meet my grandmother, and oh, by the way, there's a museum of my family.
There's a museum what?
Of my family. Okay. And there really was. So it was kind of cool later on to bring our children there. You know, they got to hold the sword. There was this massive sword that Don Antonio Hilly Barbo carried, and my little bitty toddlers got to, you know, brandish the sword. And so that part was really cool. There's a statue in the town square, the originally Barbo. So that's fun, but what's even more fun is that we found out later that my family, on my mom's side, was actually, I'm 10th generation, he's 10th generation, I'm 10th generation. On my mom's side, because he came over with Stephen F. Austin and what they call the old 300, if you've done Texas research. So my roots go almost as far back. So my kids are kind of pedigreed Texans.
What other questions do you all have there in the store?
You had mentioned your agent a few minutes ago, and I just was going to ask, I saw your dedication at the beginning of the book that to your agent, Wendy Lawton, and it says, here's to another 10 years. So I was wondering if you could explain that.
Oh, sure. I've been published for 15 years. As of 2015 was my 15th year in publishing, which was such a cool year. And it was also 2015 was also 10 years of representation by my agent. I've been with Wendy Lawton and Books and Such literary agency for 10 years. So that was what that was about. She's a wonderful writing partner for me. I call her my Sherpa. She is my writing Sherpa. I'm following her up the mountain.
That is a neat thought. What else do you all have there at the Vine in Dyer, Indiana?
Do you have a favorite genre that you like to read?
Everything. You know, I have favorite genres. I'm reading. I like a little bit of everything. I read romance. I love romance. I was a reader before I was a writer, so romance is always a good choice for me. I love mystery. I'm not a very accomplished mystery writer, but I try to put a little bit in. But I've gotten on this kick, thanks to Wendy Lawton, of reading Reese Bowen. And if you've not read Reese Bowen or Anne Perry, who's a little bit more gritty, Reese Bowen is hilarious. Her British mysteries are some of my favorites. I like mainstream, just general market books. I'm trying to think what I've read recently that was really good. Of course, it's going to all escape my mind now. I'm also reading some nonfiction. I'm way behind the times, but I'm finally reading Jen Hatmaker's For the Love, and I can't put it down. It's so good. I don't know if you've read it, but oh my goodness, the beef recipe in chapter 6, try it. We had it last night. It's amazing.
Wow.
Not kidding. Yeah, so I like a little bit of everything. A really well-written book is, you know, you catch me with that. And if I had to put like a top 10 list, it'd be all over the map. What about you guys? What do you like to read?
Romance novels.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I'm a fan of more historic, such as World War I, World War II, romance within there. But I just really enjoy that time period.
I'm actually watching the Anna Green Gables series. I take that back. I'd watched the first movie. It is so good, and we stopped last night at the point where Anne was on the battlefield in France trying to find her husband, and she just missed him on the other ambulance. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to write a scene with that kind of power. Just beautifully told. And so I'm with you. I like those time periods. I kind of tend more to World War I time period than World War II. But yeah, I do too.
What's your favorite things to write then?
My favorite things to write? Oh gosh, that's hard. I just wrote a couple of contemporary. Actually, I wrote 2 contemporary novels and a novella, which is why I will confess to you, ladies, I actually read this book over the last 24 hours. In the lunchroom, I'm a paralegal at a law office, and a couple of the attorneys came in and said, "Why are you reading your own book?" And I said, "Because I've written a couple since then, and I have to remember what happened." I just wrote 3 Southern romances, and I will tell you that maybe in the overall scheme of things, I'm proud of everything I write. I am, but I have had more fun because one of my main characters is my mother.
Oh,
My mother, Bonnie Sue, and she is Bonnie Sue in the book. She has a different last name. She is Bonnie Sue Miller in real life. She is Bonnie Sue in the book as well. And my mother is, in equal measure, terrified and thrilled at what I'm going to write next. Because people have told me, you have to write about your mother. She is a character. Well, she is. And the whole series got started with something my mother said at Luby's. And she said it probably 10 years ago. No, it was 2002. And we were in Luby's with my mother, my grandmother, and my daughter, who was little at the time. And she said this: "I don't know if I'm ever going to meet a man." She was widowed in '93, so because all I ever do is go to the quilt guild and the choir. So he's either going to have to quilt or sing. And I said, "Okay, nobody talk." And I wrote it all down because my mother had never dated. She'd been a widow since 1993 in her early 50s, very young widow. And she'd never dated. She'd never, ever had any interest in any of this because the people her age were old men. And so she didn't want to go out with old men. And I thought, this is a book someday. And I have been blessed to be able to turn this into, so far it's 2 books, or a book and a novella that are out, and another book that's coming out later in the spring. And we're having a blast.
What are the titles of those books?
Well, it's Firefly Summer.
Oh, that cute one.
Yeah, that's it. That's the Firefly Summer, and then the novella is in a book called The Boy Next Door collection, and it's a story called Autumn. Well, it was called Autumn Leaves, and it got changed editorially to Autumn Sky. And then the one that is coming up is going to be called Spring Fling. And these are women in their 50s who have romance in their lives. 40s and 50s. 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And cowboys. Gotta put cowboys in.
so did your mom find romance?
She won't. Yes and no. Yes and no. My dad's best friend promised my dad before he passed away. He was 58 when he passed away, and he promised him, "I'll look after her." And they've had a friendship over the years. Both of them are single, and they have a friendship, and it's never really gone past that friendship. But I kind of wonder. She does this book, though.
We missed what you said.
Oh, I said she does in the book, though.
Okay. But did you say you think it will turn into a romance?
I think so. Yeah, the gentleman that she's been friends with all these years was raising a special needs child, and that's if any of you have a special needs child, you know that can be a full-time job, and so that doesn't really allow a whole lot of time for relationship. That special needs child is now well into adulthood and kind of settled on his own, so they date. My mother would kill me if she knew I told you that. But I think they go to Olive Garden every once in a while. And he's Scottish.
Don't tell her that this is going out to the whole world.
He's an accent. No, you can't tell. You have to edit that out. You're going to kick me out of the will. Now I'll just write something else.
Well, you know, they romance that they found out, they did that study that said 90% of readers try something that they read in a romance novel. And everything from what Kathleen just said about trying the recipe in chapter 6 of the book she read to new ways to communicate. And so you never know, those Olive Garden dates might turn into something special.
No, I was a single woman for 7 years, and then my husband, who was a friend of mine, my current husband, who was a friend of mine at high school, found me on Facebook. And it was the most interesting thing because all my readers got to watch my romance happen on Facebook. It's such a role reversal. Talk about God doing something in a way that you would never expect and doing something so spectacular. That I'm living proof that he exists. And he does far more than we ever expect, and he's very creative.
Was he the one in the military?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So what? Yeah.
Yes. If you go to the ACFW conference, he's the general barking orders. Yes. They put him to work. They figured out he was there for a couple of years and put him to work. So he's now on staff.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, so I just want to make sure everybody had a chance to ask a question or say anything you wanted to say. So here we are in the last couple minutes, and then we'll turn it back over to the book club to finish out their time together. So, ladies, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think we're good. We had a wonderful hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen.
So much. You guys made my day. Thank you.
Kathleen,
And one more thing.
and this is just on a side note for later. I was trying to go on the website. I was having a hard time messaging you. If I don't know if somehow we can just get a mailing address for you, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh yes, I responded. I guess you didn't get it back.
Okay, maybe we were closed Monday and Friday, so maybe I just didn't see it then. Okay.
Let me know because I did receive it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and if you ever have a problem getting hold of one of the authors from the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection, you can always email me, or you can email Barber through their website as well, and they'll definitely get messages to us. But having the blessing of being able to act as MC, I know how to get each one of these ladies. So let me know if you are having any trouble connecting.
Okay.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that next week we will be meeting with Rose Ross Zedeker as our last author in the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection in our Monday night online book clubs. And I'm looking forward to sharing her with you and her novella called Railroaded into Love. So hopefully you are all enjoying this time together. I know we're enjoying it very much with you. And thank you to Kathleen Barbo for joining us today. And thank you to the Vine at Faith Church in Dyer, Indiana for being with us and hosting us, because we're just having a blast with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
We actually have someone that has a question for Kathleen. If you have
Sure.
Actually, not a question. I just really thoroughly enjoyed the story, and I shared this with a friend today, actually, after work, and I love this note that was from the husband. I'm sorry, I came in late, so this might have already been brought up, but I mean, it was such a beautiful note, dear glory, from the husband that was hidden, and what you were saying just now about God has a way, like he's he works in creative ways and how he's always there. I thought this was just absolutely beautiful. And she said, Michelle, I want this book. I mean, like, okay, you can get that was just a real blessing. I just had to add that.
Oh, thank you.
That actually made me cry. It was gorgeous. Beautiful.
Made you laugh, made you cry. That is an excellent compliment to a writer.
It really is. It really is. Well, thank you so much for having us, and we will see you same time next week, and we'll get to meet Rose Ross-Zedeker. So we'll see you then, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.